Hey you guys, it's Moonlander back with another horror movie review, and today we're going to be looking at the documentary called The Mothman of Point Pleasant.
It very slowly and precisely walked towards us.
This was just released on June 2nd. It's written and directed by Seth Breedlove, and he's made several other small-town monster documentaries. So in this documentary, you get interviews with some eyewitnesses and locals and a local newspaper reporter. This documentary includes a lot of history. It goes into the Shawnee Indian tribe, and it documents sightings of the Mothman dating all the way back to 1914. And then it goes into the history of a wildlife refuge where a lot of sightings have happened. That was originally an ammo production site for the military for World War II. And then after that it was a toxic waste dump site. And today it's a wildlife refuge. And then it takes a look at in 1966, after a mass amount of sightings, the locals finally gathered up and took their guns to hunt this Mothman down.
It got to the point where the National Guard had to step in and control the amount of people that were coming into the TNT area.
And the National Guard had to get involved in. After watching this and listening to everything they had to say, I think the National Guard was more likely deployed to deal with the locals than the Mothman. But so then this documentary goes into a lot about UFOs, a grinning man, and the men in black. I would almost say this documentary is like half UFOs and half about the Mothman. It's not really clear if they try to connect the two or just suggest the idea that they may be connected. And then it goes into about a bridge collapse that connected Ohio to West Virginia and the possible involvement of the Mothman. So the good things about this documentary is that it does include interviews with the locals, and I think that's important for this type of documentary.
I mean, we was just sitting there, we didn't know what to do, we was afraid to move.
And there was some animated reenactments that I appreciated, because I think a documentary is better with reenactments. It just makes it a more entertaining experience. But other than that, I can't really say too much that's good about this documentary. For the stuff I didn't like about this documentary is you're not going to get any interviews with any skeptics. The only mention of skepticism in this documentary is at one point in time they got a biologist from a university in the area, and he thought that the sightings might actually be a crane that was migrating. There are owls in this area, and there was no mention of owls throughout the whole documentary. There was no clear direction on this documentary. It showed a lot of history, but it didn't really describe why it was relevant to the Mothman. And then it goes on to like all these UFO sightings and whatnot, but it doesn't really connect the Mothman to it. So it's almost like they didn't really have a clear direction they wanted to go in with this documentary. So my final thoughts on this is I did not think this was an interesting documentary at all. I just don't think it was done very well. I watched this like hoping to even slightly believe in the possibility that there was a Mothman, and I did not come away with that at all. In fact, it made me disbelieve in the possibility. So I would say that this documentary did a poor job. And I mean, it was just really boring. It was only an hour and 7 minutes long, I believe, but it felt like it was 2 hours long. I think they went on too much about the history of the area, and they never really connected it to what they were supposed to be dealing with in the documentary. So it just felt like filler. And at the end of the documentary, they show how that small town now has a Mothman museum. And every year they have an annual festival. And they get like 10,000 people or more that show up to this thing. So, and they even interview one guy, and he says how if they owe the Mothman royalties, they're in trouble. So I really feel like this is just a hoax, and these sightings just seem bogus. I mean, they play some audio clips, and people may have seen something, but just that they think it was a flying Mothman, it just is really hard to swallow. I don't suggest this documentary. I mean, it's boring, and when you watch something like this, it's supposed to be fun and maybe lead you to believe in even a slight possibility that it's real. I guess maybe I could believe the UFO sightings, but I still, this just seems like almost like a hysteria that was built up in the area. And eventually when they show that how the bridge collapsed, and I think like 70 people died, and they mentioned how the sightings like completely dropped off almost. And I think it was because it was like a reality check for the area. So I'm going to give this documentary a 2 out of 10. The only people I think that might get some enjoyment out of this is if you're from that area, or if you firmly believe that the Mothman exists. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.